that's your father up there, Philip Corso? And he said, yes. And I said, I'm shy, I'm not gonna do it, because I knew the cameras would be pointing on me. And he took his hand and he pushed me into the crowd, and I had no choice. And I asked him about the Santilli footage. I don't know if you've seen the alien autopsy footage that we in Italy put on national TV. And I believe part of that footage is real for many reasons. Anyways, Corso answered me in Italian and says, because you know, he was the head of intelligence around 1945. This is not somebody off the street. How do I know that? I took him to his hotel, I took him to where he worked, I made him tell me every part of his life there in 1945. He was telling the truth. So he's always an intelligence. Corso wrote 3 books. He wrote The Day After Roswell manuscript, not the one that Bill Burns put out. The real Corso is called, a book is called The Dawn of a New Age. And it talks about ET contact. And then he wrote The Day After Dallas, which will never be see the light of day, because he was involved with the Kennedy assassination stuff. I asked him once about it, and he said, you don't want to know, it's so dirty, he says, you don't want to know. And the 3rd book he wrote was The Day After Rome, which I read. It's the inception of the CIA, how it was created, because Colonel Corso was part of the CIC, which was the first intelligence community before the CIA. So here's Corso, highly, highly credible, that some of my colleagues bashed like crazy in their last years on the stage. Because it's always a battle about books or who gets attention. And I couldn't believe it. In the United States, people would speak against Colonel Corso and Paul Hellyer. Paul Hellyer, because Paul Hellyer believed this because he read Corso's book called The Generals. And the generals said, former defense minister at the time of McNamara in the United States, calling him a crazy, demented old man. My own colleagues, I'm not going to name them. But if you read Colonel Corso's book that I wrote, I named them. Our people debunk our own people. And I remember Colonel Corso, he told me, he said, we don't have to worry about you ufologists. He said, you're all fighting among each other. He said, and the truth is never going to come out because you don't sit and talk to each other, so we don't have to do anything to throw disinformation out there. Because he says the first case that comes out, everybody's debunked it already. He said, and he told me this. And I said, yeah, I see that pattern. Nobody does intense research, and they're going after each other. I can't even tell you how many people came after the book Trinity just because it was their first crash. Half of my colleagues haven't even read it. Written by Jacques Vallée. You know, okay, efforts to disclosure. Well, I just discovered this recently. So I took Colonel Corso, I said, Colonel, you know, I'm from Italy, we're inviting you to come speak. Could you come to Italy and speak? And he came to San Marino, the independent Republic of San Marino. What I didn't realize at the time, because I thought I was bodyguarding Corso, was that the San Marino had made this resolution to the United Nations. And guess who was there? I don't know if you recognize Colin Andrews and Michael Hesseman, Yvonne Smith. Here we are in San Marino, the independent Republic of San Marino, and he is telling the world. I had a bunch of fiber optics that came from a flying saucer. And every single, we're all there. And this is disclosure, I'm sorry. Who's there is Colin Andrews, and the man that's holding the book up is the famous Desmond Leslie that wrote the Adamski books from Ireland. And right next to him, Jim Perrant, who is a pilot, and there's Messen from Belgium, and behind him, Boris Chernoff from Russia. And on the corner, Gilles Laborde, who just died, God bless him. He's from Paris, and there's Yvonne Smith. And here we all are. And what I didn't realize was that I had signed that paper too. I had signed that resolution. because I have a copy of the resolution in San Marino. Here we are, and here's Boris Chernoff signing it, and all of us in there, and here are the words. I have a copy of it that I have translated, it, and it says, basically says, the Independent Republic of San Marino wants to open the UFO question because it's so important to the world, and they did the resolution, but look at the people that signed it. Shen Shi from China, Boris Chernoff from Russia, Colonel Philip Course, of course, my name is there too. And when you have a serious disclosure effort, 1998, because we had Corso in San Marino, that's an effort for disclosure. I'm sorry, but I think that's some kind of disclosure. It's not a media circus or anything. We tried, but then again, somebody had a political thing happen and we didn't get very far. For me, this man did so much, and Steve, you were there, when he said in Toronto, and I was invited, but I had something happen to me where I was in the hospital, and I couldn't attend this. He said UFOs are as real as the airplanes are over our head. This is the former defense minister. It's not somebody off the street. And when he says that, that's serious. So, because I was in the hospital and I couldn't attend this, and I wasn't there, on my own money, I flew across the ocean from Rome and interviewed him in his office. Hired the camera crew, put out that interview all over the United States. I thought that was disclosure. Former defense minister, imagine our former defense minister. Now our congressmen are talking, and we have one or two senators, but this is a defense minister. So I did this in order to get it out, because the people, you guys were there, but it didn't go to the United States, and that's where I wanted it, even though I didn't live here. So the other one, the efforts for disclosure, the Hawaii Declaration of Citizen Diplomacy, is very important. I was there because Paul Hellyer, who had told his new wife he was never going to deal with this, so he agreed. He got obsessed with UFOs and he spoke everywhere, and she wasn't happy. Because when he came out to speak, what happened was that people took him seriously. Some people took him seriously. So we did the disclosure. Michael Sala invited us all to Hawaii. We wrote the disclosure, we wrote a document called the Hawaii Declaration of Citizen Diplomacy, which meant, if we meet you ETs, this is how we want you to act. This is how we're gonna act. And this was done in 2006. I'm giving you a chronological timeline of all this stuff that happened. What blew me away is the man on the right is Ambassador John MacDonald of United States Ambassador John MacDonald to Ireland, who signed this too. There's Paul Hellyer, but a United States ambassador signs a declaration talking about ETs. I love that man. He was so courageous. I said, and by the way, he was at your conference, he was at your press conference, and he died right after that, Steve. He was in the front row because I went to talk to him about his courage. He's an ambassador. He's to Ireland. So anyway, if you want to know the details, get hold of me of that. And here are the people that were there at the time. Let's see. Thomas Hansen, Joan Ocean, Robert Salas, James Gilliland. We all drafted this thing, and it was done in Hawaii. And when I was there, I just happened to be looking in the sky, and somebody was paying attention. So I got these pictures of these sightings in Hawaii when I was there at the time. And I thought, wow, this is really. But I'm going to tell you a little side story. I was, Paul had just got married, Paul Hallier, the former president for the second time, had just got married. And I was sitting with Mary Rodwell, who you know is, she's basically a hypnotherapist from Australia. And I get the phone brought over to me, and it's the CIA people. And they're going, we want to talk to Paul Hallier. And I say, you can't talk to him, he's swimming with his wife on his honeymoon in the pool. Because I tried to deflect that telephone call. They wanted to shut him up. And so when I handed the phone back, they looked at me and they said, you get off our operation and we'll get off yours. And I was shaking, but I didn't give the phone to Paul Hallier. Did they get to Paul Hallier? Yes. They called him while he was in on the taxi back to the airport. And I was with Paul Hallier in Boulder, Colorado, where they told him to tone it down. And Paul couldn't sleep that night. Do you think these people are heroes?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Tone it down. We don't have Paul Hallier with us anymore. And we need to remember this. And because they tried efforts at disclosure. So then I got really involved in what was called exopolitics. And my first books were exopolitics. So I tried to get all the young people together. And I tried to get them together to do something in Europe because I figured we weren't going to do it here. So Capan from Spain organized a conference in Barcelona, and Steve, you were there, 1,000 people. And there was no vendors, and they were all professors and professional people in the audience, and it was called Time for Truth. And it was 2009. Do you think that was an effort at disclosure? Yes, I'll tell you who was there. Those are all the exopolitics guys. There's Jean-Jacques Dubois, the pilot of Air France, who with 360 people saw UFO outside his airline, Air France. He's a pilot, and and he reported it. And there he's showing you the size of the UFO and reporting in France. You may not get it in the United States, but they have no problem. Air France didn't have any problem. When I went to interview him, I said, where exactly was this UFO? And he said, over a nuclear power plant. But if I'm interviewing, because I don't think they just fly around. And he explained it. There we all are. There's Steve. There was Stephen Greer. There was Brian O'Leary. There was Steve Bassett. There was Michael Sala. There was Nick Hope, and of course Robert Dean. And here I am talking to Jean-Charles Dubois about where this UFO was. I was the only woman with all these guys. And I thought, oh my God, in fact, when I was introduced, they said, this is the Google of ufology. I said, you're calling me the Google of ufology? And they said, yeah, because you know all the details. So it is. But here's Nick Pope talking about Rendlesham. Rendlesham really happened. We have Jim Preston, we have the reason why Rendlesham happened is the United States at that time was not supposed to have nukes in England. And so the ETs has a funny sense of humor. They're going to have a sighting where the guys are going to see the UFO right over the nuclear power, right over the storage area where we got the nukes, and then it comes out. What a sense of humor they have. Because that was part of the deal. Was, you can have a base here in Rendlesham, but you don't bring anything over. We did. And if you look into that, the guys that did that were really, really heroes about talking about what happened to them. Disclosure projects. This, for me, was the beginning of the beginning. For me, because I had Stephen Burr with me in Rome, and we began interviewing people near the Rome train station. He had all of this testimony. And, are you going to question a Federal Aviation Administration guy telling me he's crazy? For me, that is disclosure. And he tried in 2000. We're in 2025, by the way, where everybody thinks, oh, disclosure in Washington, isn't this wonderful? One or two pilots see a TikTok. Come on. Did you bother to go back to Stephen Burr's disclosure page? That's what the name was, where Covered Stone came out. Okay, the May 3rd, 2013 Washington Press Club really affected me, and that was Reuben Langdon and Stephen Bassett, and 39 witnesses from all over the world. It was amazing, and Danny was there too. Danny, you're going to see Danny at the end of, because I'm trying to get all the pictures. What they had done, of course, our own people come after us, is they have gotten retired congressmen and retired senators. You think that any of these guys that are today that are there are going to ever be part of this? They were retired, they had nothing to lose, and they were all part of this. And what had happened was, they were shocked. Because I came in with Paul Hallier and I was looking at everybody's face. And here's all the people that testified. First of all, you see Robert Wood, who just passed on, big hero. Grant Cameron, Linda Howe. You see, here's the congressmen and the senators, and you see Stanton Friedman, Richard Dolan, Stephen Greer. And look at the look on the faces of those retired people. They are in, I remember the woman on the end, I think her name was Kirkpatrick, and she was getting coffee and she couldn't keep her coffee cup still. It was shaking. And I went up to her, I said, it's okay, it's okay. I said, it's real, it's okay. Because she knew she was going to be part of this, but she didn't look at the caliber of people they brought into the Washington trip. Look at these people swearing, I testify, I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. There's Shen Shili from China. There's Roberta Pinotti from Italy. There's all these people. And of course, if you think it's just a joke or hobby or we're crazy, and these people have no background, they didn't study any of this. Here's all the people swearing to tell the truth and nothing but, you don't call this disclosure? Washington Press Club? With all these people? And we don't have Jesse Marcel. Did I show Jesse Marcel? Jesse Marcel Jr. from Roswell, a 9-year-old that saw all the pieces and said, no, that was not a mobile balloon. He's there too with his kids. You know how important this is? You guys gotta go back and look at the citizen hearing. Because these people, some of them are dead, that testified here. They had good intentions to bring this out. It's in Washington, D.C. It's not in Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay? So here we are, and they are really shocked at what and they don't know what to do. They're all looking at each other going, how do we tell the world? You know, here I am with Paul Hallier, and they're all discussing outside here's some of the people. Here we are, and these Latin Americans, they're the ones that blew me away. Of course, it was simultaneous translation, because those guys that are standing up are not ufologists. They were generals. They are military people that have problems in Uruguay, Paraguay with UFOs over their military sites. And they thought this was worth their while to go and testify. They didn't even speak English. They basically were there to do this. And of course, I was impressed. I was sitting there going, oh my God. These people are, and Paul Hallier, who was there. And did anything happen? Disclosure? No, this is in Washington. They're all standing up and they're basically testifying. And there's the Roswell crew, there's Kevin Randall, right? There's Reuben Langdon, who with Steve did this. Reuben has moved to Tokyo, Japan. I want to work in Japan very, very badly because they really are taking this seriously. And there is a Senator Gravel who was, he was independent. He wasn't Democrat or Republican, right? He was independent. Yeah. And he was, I mean, he took this seriously, but he had already retired, so he could only go so far. Okay, so many governments have released their UFO files. I just happened by coincidence to fly into Dublin, Ireland the day that they released the files, so I was on Good Morning Dublin. Okay, so there I am. The problem is this, there's a problem here. The woman that released the files, she was afraid for her life, so she came to the station and gave me the files. She said, I have 2 kids, I can't do this. She said, you take the files back to the United States. The files are at Rice University. I don't know what to do with me. Give them to me, I don't know what to do with them. I was like, I'll just collect this stuff for you. Is that disclosure? Yes, Dublin, Good Morning Dublin, like Good Morning America. Okay, here's Stephen Bassett's X conferences, which were the most important disclosure efforts that I've ever attended. And here they are, and I'm standing next to a very young Cameron. I'm standing next to Monsignor Balducci. You can see a very young, what's his name, Dolan, and just everybody that was there. And did we try to make an effort throughout, and look at the dates of these. These is 2009, we're in 2025 now. Look at this.
Paula,
Yeah.
if I get the funding, I'm gonna hold a 7th X conference this year.
Woohoo!
But you held like 5 of them, and I wonder what's going on.
I have 6.
6.
And I'm gonna hold a 7th of them called X Conference 2025.
But what I want is the support of the general public to have this mean something if we did 5 already.
Well, I'm gonna promote it.
I know, well, there you are, this is all thanks to Stephen. Do you remember, because I'm with you, I'm always like one of the only women here. Do you remember us spending together there, all of us, during this? And you had Jaime Maussan from Mexico, which I think has the greatest amount of video footage and everything, because it just comes through him. So they just sent it there because he has a whole entire 5-story building in Mexico City on this. So here we are, efforts of disclosure, videos and documentaries. Do you remember this movie? How many people remember Thrive? If Foster Gamble really tried, really tried, so I talked to Foster Gamble about this, because they've been trying through videos, movies, streaming, and everything. How far did we get? That was an incredible film, if you saw Thrive, about the technology. This just happened. Mexico City, and by the way, that happened to be the Cámara de los Diputados, which means the council. That was the government, and they weren't retired. And they had it just now in 2013. They were one of our pilots from the citizen hearing in Washington, D.C. was one of the guests there. So are other people trying to do that? Yes. Here's my recommendation is stop looking at podcasts, stop looking at YouTube, and go back and read the original stuff. Because if you connect the dots, you'll realize we had disclosure from the very beginning. It's like, this is Sedona, Arizona. When I went to do the Latin American work, I realized that there was something inside the spaceship, and I had to look at that, which was hard for me, and realized that in Latin America was Sisto Paz-Wells, Ricardo Gonzalez, Luis Fernando Mostacio, Enrique Villanueva, Claudio Vela, and all the other people I interviewed, that there are space people working off spaceships. And they're not only that, this started in the 1970s, when they left Giant Rock in Southern California. They went down to Mexico, to Peru, and then I had to wrap my mind around that, how difficult it was. Very, very quickly, my field research has been everywhere. This is a UFO we saw in Rome. This is Pescara, Italy. This is part of the friendship case. I had to go cover that. Friendship 1954, ETs met with Italians and had an experiment called Friendship. I had to go and interview the people who were involved in that who were left, and they were in their 90s. So here's Antonio Uzi, Milano. I just went with James Fox 2 years ago to Antonio's place to get this footage. In broad daylight, now it's not photoshopped and it is not. I mean, if you look at the movies, his wife is saying, come in and eat because the rice is ready. On the film, as he's filming. He didn't make that up. She's yelling at him because the rice is ready. I said, James, this is real. I don't know how this guy gets his footage. So I met Antonio, who was in Mexico City, and he walks out of the, because we spoke at the same conference, and I said, don't you walk out of here without taking me. I want to see a UFO. Walk across the street, he says, Paula, look up in the sky. He said, see that little white dot? Within minutes, there was all kinds of cameramen and everything. He says, you don't bother to look up in the sky, he says. Because I wanted to say something. Here's the heroes. Look at the UFO over there. It's Ricardo Gonzalez and Luis Mustacio and Sisto Paz in Peru. Okay, so we don't get that kind of thing because I don't think they're going to New York City. But if you go to the Atacama Desert where I was, in the Valle de la Luna, I saw mothership right over our heads because there's no flight patterns or everything, and the people were meditating. So then mentally I gotta go, well, God, there's this psychic, spiritual connection. You gotta grow up, Paula, because this is it's more complicated than you think it is, and it is connected with consciousness. So here I am. This is all the film. These are from the Marito Palalo case. This is the Friendship case in Chile that I covered, 1970. I went down there and I said to Ortiz, what's his name? Victoria Ortiz, I said, you mean ETs came to your door and asked you to leave everything so you could go to the island of Chiloé and they were working on healing people? And he said, yeah, my wife saw them and my child saw them. And I said, they came to the door. I said, what they look like? He said, human beings. They were human beings. This one had a short haircut. And he asked that we come. And I got the whole entire story. It's on my YouTube channel. And I have to start connecting dots because they're not just, we're way past the sightings. We're just in the wrong country. You know, it's just, and here's my book in Japanese. Connecting the Dots for me is the best disclosure book because it's got 23 interviews from Zachariah Sitchin to John Mack to Jacques Vallée to Alan Hynek to everybody. It's got I interviewed all gamut of people and asked the people, everybody. And when I got to Japan, 6 journalists met with me at the Westin Hotel and said, oh my God. We don't have all of this information. And I said, these are all the people in my book. I just translated for you in Japanese. If you're going to read it, it's not me, Paula. It's all the people that just told me all this stuff. And so I realized that it's very, very important to do this worldwide. Like, Steve, if you do this, invite foreign people. Because they've got a lot of information, they don't know where to go. So the nuclear problem is a problem 1945. For me, we opened a Pandora's box that got somebody's attention, okay, in 1945, because the Trinity case is 1 month after the atomic bomb. I'm going to show you something to show you the importance of that book. I covered it, but here we go. That is a picture of the atomic bomb explosion. What is sitting at the bottom of that explosion from a camera? It kind of came out of Italy. When I was in Jaime Maussan's office in Mexico City, he says, Paula, I have something to show you. Look at the atomic bomb, look what's sitting there. You wonder why Orthon talked to Adamski? At the bottom, and that's a photograph of 1 of 7 cameras, and he gave me the name of the cameras and where they were all located during that atomic bomb explosion. So somebody was watching. And not only that, right after that, Einstein and Oppenheimer write a letter to Truman and say, we got a problem. And they did it before Roswell, so it had to be about Trinity. This letter, this MJ-12 document, was written in June, because Roswell is in July, Independence Day, 4th of July. They wrote it and they called it Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial, with an R, Bodies. Letter to President Truman, we got a problem. 6-page letter that I translated into Japanese for the Japanese. We have to do something. There are UFOs watching us, and Einstein's really cool because he called them cosmic cultures. He didn't call them little gray aliens who were running around. He called them cosmic cultures. He said if they have cultures, he said our United Nations can't handle it. We need to develop a supra-United Nations. He said, and it was signed by Oppenheimer and Einstein, and it never got to Truman because Vannevar Bush stopped it from going to Truman. This is a disclosure. I called Ryan one, and I said, Ryan, because I want to see. I said, Ryan, you and your father got this MJ-12 document. I said, did you have it analyzed? He said, yes. We did it for the first time. He said, forensic analysis. We got how Einstein wrote. We got, well, the fact that he said celestial instead of celestial. He said, we got the paper analyzed. We got the ink analyzed. Einstein knew, so did Oppenheimer. And I can call it a problem, but it is a problem in the way of national security. Here we are, when the movie Oppenheimer came out, I knew that the crash site for Trinity was 3 miles away from the Al Barn Cafe, where Oppenheimer had a cabin. In fact, we went into Oppenheimer's cabin, he still had the planks for the bomb under the bed. So it's 3 miles away, and he's still there, and he doesn't know there was a crash. Yes, he did. They all did. And they didn't know what to do about it. And there's the Al Barn Cafe, so there's this book is so detailed about research. But it's natural. I mean, naturally, if we're gonna throw an atomic bomb into it, it affects every, dimension, whatever's out there. And I'm not gonna name the reptilians, greys, or Nordics. This is ridiculous. When you have a book of 57 different races, and Colonel Corso told me they have categorized 52 in the Pentagon, and then he said, we weren't afraid of those guys, we were afraid of the ones that look like us, he said, because they could walk up and down the halls of the Pentagon. He said, we were afraid of those guys, because we couldn't recognize them. So here we go with what happened in 1945, San Antonio crash, the book Trinity, which ended up being a bestseller, which none of my colleagues have read. So we don't talk among each other, connect our research. Because if we did, we'd find out the truth. My library of 300 books, I've read everybody's research. I've had to, otherwise I don't know what's going on. If I don't read their research, then I only read my own book and my own research. How do I figure it out? I mean, am I stupid or something? And I'm thinking, everybody should read everybody's research so that you can connect the dots. So here's the Trinity book. It's Japanese up there, and it's translated into Japanese on the corner. So here I am with Jacques, and we're having all these conversations about this because Jacques came in after 5 years because of the metal. Because the little 9-year-old went in there on the last day of the 7-day recovery and pulled a piece off the inside of the craft as a souvenir, and he hid it. And he's not going to talk about it, he stole it for 60 years until he gave it to me. I tried to have it analyzed here. I'm not even going to talk about it. It is not here. It is in Mexico City. The truth of the matter is, I'm convinced nothing's going to come out. I mean, it's, there's Paul with us. I'm trying to, even like a wolf piece that I got, what we did was send it to the university in Siena in Italy. the Atacama being that they say is not real. I went to Barcelona. That thing was, there's about 5 of them, there's not just one. And that was analyzed in Germany. They don't have a stake in it, they're gonna tell the truth. I do not wanna base ufology on metal, what do you call it, metal, analysis. I wanna base it on witness testimony. The people that are involved with this phenomenon, and they're being ignored in Washington, D.C. Totally. So something needs to change. You can see how frustrated I am. There's Roswell. I interviewed before he died, Glenn Dennis, the mortician, who gets asked for 6 children's coffins, so naturally he's gonna ask, where's the accident? You know, and he said that it's not a mobile balloon. We gotta get past the stupidity of all of this. You know, he's no longer with us. So here's Robert Spillis, who's telling the truth about the missile shutdown. And again, I asked Robert, did you get a message? And he said, yeah. He said, we can't shut you down, so I'm gonna deactivate the coast. This is during the Cold War. And by the way, we're back in the Cold War. You don't think we're back, we didn't go anywhere. Russia's still the enemy, we're still against Russia. I believe personally that John F. Kennedy wanted to go to the moon with Khrushchev because there should be no country putting a flag on the moon or Mars. I mean, this is craziness. What, is China gonna go to Mars and put a flag, or go to the moon and put a flag? If the ETs are watching us, they probably think we're insane. You know, I'm thinking, so Kennedy had that conversation with Khrushchev. And now, guess what? Ironically, we have to go on Russian spaceships in order to get to this. You know, it's so crazy. I keep thinking, is anybody using logic here? We have to use Russian spaceships in order to get to the station. Here's the Fuji, you know. When I was in Japan, I had to talk about Japanese things. So the fact that there's UFOs over Fukushima, they're not on vacation. And if you know anything about Chernobyl, there was a big UFO that sucked out 3/4 of the radiation over Chernobyl because they didn't want all that radiation to go on all the, the fields and we'd be contaminated with them. They care about us in some kind of weird way. I personally feel they've lost patience completely. We're back in the Cold War and they're going, these people are crazy. You know, they can't get it together. They should come together. I think of the Beatles song, Come Together, come together, come together. Okay, here's the connection. I know I've overloaded you, but you can see from the amount of research, and I was there. I didn't know I signed the paper. I just saw my signature on it the other day. So I didn't know I did all these things. I was just there. I happened to be there. And I thought, okay, you are here to do something for this world that only you can do. And unfortunately or fortunately, it becomes an obsession like they did with Paul Hellyer. And we like to believe, and all the people that died that I mentioned, from Corso to Paul Hellyer to Monsieur Bellucci's died too, and all of them, they move the needle a little bit. And I'm so grateful for them because now that they're not here, I will represent them. We have to. There's nothing else. And over college, I used to do conferences in Laughlin, Nevada until I lost my shirt. So now I do intimate conferences in Crestone, Colorado, which is a very spiritual place. You know, Hannah Strong and Maureen Strong bought that with the money of Lawrence Rockefeller. As a symbol, they gave all these parcels of land to all the religions of the world. There's 2 Zen centers, there's ashrams, there's the Shumei Center, which is like Japanese Reiki, there's the Carmelite nuns, And Crestone has the only outdoor funeral pyre where you can, be cremated outdoors. And the body is watched by the Carmelite nuns, and the Zen priests come during there. And that is a utopia experiment in all the religions of the world living together. And I came into Crestone because I did the movie series with Stephen Greer. And when I realized all those religious, I didn't know that Lawrence Rockefeller had given the money for this experiment to Maurice and Hannah Strong with the help of Ambassador James George, Canadian ambassador, who's ambassador to India. I didn't realize Crestone, Colorado is a very special place. So I'm bringing people there to have the spiritual experience, but one of the people I'm bringing is Britt Elders. Please don't miss her talk tomorrow. She and her husband, by the way, she's the secretary for Shirley MacLaine, yes, but she and her husband did the work on the Billy Meyer case. Did I go to Switzerland and meet Billy Meyer? Yes. Do I believe in the case? Yes. It is not Photoshop. Photoshop didn't happen until 1992. This is 1973, and you got to get the chronology of ufology right. Okay, and Wendell Stevens, I talked to him for 5 hours in Tucson Airport before I went and did the Billy Meyer case. Britt is brilliant, and she's going to talk here tomorrow. And I'm bringing her, and she's also graduated into consciousness. And then I'm bringing Cynthia Sue Larson in August to talk about the Mandela effect. And I'm bringing a brilliant French contact. He speaks beautiful English. He does most of his work in Japan, so I really would like to introduce him to the United States. And of course, Grant and I are having a conversation on Valentine's Day on the new research of Kyle Wilkins with the autistic children. That's the latest, by the way. Autistic children communicate without talking to each other. And so, since Grant already did the research on that, he'll talk, and that is a masterclass. So I do masterclasses to do Crestone things. I have my own streaming channel of all the Laughlin conferences. We have brilliant discussion. We had a discussion on AI. Why aren't we talking about AI? My God, and Paul was part of it. You were at the panel with Jacques Vallée, Adam Curry, and that's on my streaming channel. I'm convinced the little beings at Trinity were AI anyway. I'm convinced. And if China's working, and it's not our enemy, you're using it already. It's like, when you're talking to your Siri and everything, it's just that it has to be controlled. These foremost futuristic conversations need to be held because they bring into the fact that we can control something that we're educated about. To ignore it is ridiculous. I would really love to have more. And I sat with Ryan Wood, and he wrote a book called The AI Ufologist. It should be in all your libraries. It's a little book, you can read it. And what he did was put all the data, Ryan and Bob Wood are incredible. And he put it into AI, and then he had the questions, and AI answered them according to the data that was in the data bank. You don't think that's amazing? AI is answering you from all the data? And I supported Ryan Wood and his efforts to be futuristic like that. Ryan Wood also wrote a book called Magic Eyes Only of 140 crashes all over the world called It Should Be in Your Library. And that's where I found the San Antonio crash was in his book. So I'm ending this.
Did President Jimmy Carter admit that he saw UFOs?
Oh yeah, he admitted it, but when I saw the CIA documents, the problem is, and I'm telling you that I saw this in Michael Wolff's apartment, and I think I talked to Danny about this. When I went to do the Michael Wolff story, he pulls out the briefing for Jimmy Carter, and unfortunately, the CIA had questions about where Christ came from. And that upset Jimmy Carter because he was Baptist, and he shut it down immediately.
Well, the presidents have a CIA daily briefing, so all of our presidents know about it.
Of course,
Everyone.
but it's not in their general interest to talk about it. I mean, what's his name? Barack Obama, I think, really knew. He said, I'm not going to talk about it because it would be something like, they would come after me, or they told me, I don't know. And it's not popular for them to do it that way. Now, I know I disagree with Steve, but, on this, because you think that the president is good, but if it came from him, guess what, Steve, I'd be suspect. Anything that comes from them. You've got so much disclosure, you've got so many, if you read all the books, go back and read all the Roswell books, go back and read what Colonel Corso said, go back and read everything, you've got your disclosure, and my last words are, first of all, everything else is consciousness. I don't wanna talk about data anymore, I've had it. After all these years, I've had it. I wanna talk about what we can do about it, so if disclosure's already happened, what do you wanna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? This is not religion. Don't try to convert your children or your family. It's an individual interest and an individual disclosure. If you're interested in this, ask yourself why you are interested in this. My kids aren't, so I'm not gonna foist them. They've never seen my videos, they've never read my books. And when I came here, they said, Mom, have a good time. So do you think I'm gonna turn around and say your mother risked her life the last 45 years for this? No, they can't handle it. Leave them alone. It's the truth. Don't do violence to your children or your family if they can't handle it. It is not the time in their next incarnation, maybe, but not now. So my theory is not the world doesn't need to know. If you want to know, go find out. It's out there. And thank you so much for your attention, and go to my streaming channel for all of Laughlin.
And buy her books.